I was wondering, Jordan, if we could talk about a little bit of a different context because the example you shared about I heard you raise your voice. I see you clenched your fist. Some of that like like the physical input is a little bit more difficult now with a lot of folks being remote. Um, and so, do you have any distinctions between how to help people either uncover unmet needs in like the modality that most of us are in now with mostly video or audio calls? um, is there a way you can cue people in to help them be on the lookout for in during this conversation?
I mean, I think, in the Zoom world that we live in, where everyone's video chatting with each other, it's important to keep in mind that different people have different optimal levels of stimulation. And Zoom can just be overwhelming. It's just way too much for some people. And so that is a intrinsically stressful situation for them because they feel overwhelmed by information and stimulation in a way that a physical presence may not be, or that a cameras off Zoom session might not be, or a phone call might not be. Having said that, there is a level of communication fidelity that having your camera on and looking someone in the eye, at least as best as you can through a monitor, can provide in a way that a phone call cannot. And when I'm having extremely challenging conversations, those difficult conversations at work, I want to have them in person. I want to have them over Zoom with the camera so that you can look in my eyes and see that, my face is telling you that I want what's best for us. And I mean that genuinely. And it's a lot easier to believe that when you are, able to see me and I'm able to see you. Um, it's also a lot easier to be frustrated with someone who is abstract and doesn't really feel like a person so much as another internet user, right? A handle on the other end of a screen. And so I think it's important to strike the balance between ensuring that people have their individual needs met with regards to fidelity of communication and not being overstimulated or overwhelmed, and providing enough emotional fidelity in the communication media to have the kinds of challenging conversations that you need to engage and collaborate on challenging areas.
Yeah, I learned this in hard way. I remember that I made a terrible mistake. There's one time I provided a piece of feedback for the work that Patrick did, and that was done over text message. So out of context, this is what I feel, and it, as you can imagine, it didn't come across well. And I've since never do any provide any feedback through a text, either Slack or a text message. At least need to have a conversation, or I can record a video or audio, so that people can hear your voice, your physical expressions, and they know have some additional information to sort of parse out the message from that. Because otherwise, if just the text, people can interpret it in different ways. They can add emotions to it when they read it. So uh, that is so true.
That's an amazing point.
Yeah, like I think it was something like Jerry was providing feedback on some type of design thing, and I think the what was said was like, "This is not good" or something like that. Like very very simple, very direct. And in one version of interpretation, it could be like, "Oh, like it's just not in the right direction, or the quality is not up to the bar that we want." But then I immediately jump to, "This is not good," as in I'm a failure, I'm the worst, and then that's how I interpret it, but that was not Jerry's intent, but it was like one of those classic cases of intent versus impact, and we were able to talk through it, obviously. But it is just a simple thing like that could be a trigger point, which is really why interacting with human beings is tricky.
Yeah, I have folks on my team who have not always benefited from emotionally intelligent management. And when you use a lower fidelity communication medium like text or kind of a Slack message, like Jerry said, folks can let their imaginations wander and fill in those gaps with whatever they fear most, right? Um,
Exactly.
a- and that can become a problem for sure. And look, I mean, we can do an entire episode on feedback. You could probably do hours and hours and hours on just personal feedback and delivering it and how to optimize that. But Ultimately, I think what's important is that folks have their needs met. They are able to communicate and collaborate closely and as a team. And ultimately, delivering feedback is a form of conflict, right? We have a mismatch of expectations, and that mismatch must be reconciled in order for the organization to perform effectively. And if we don't do it thoughtfully and consistently, then 6 months from now, when it's performance review time, you're going to be surprised that I have a set of expectations you're not meeting, and you have a set of expectations that is inaccurate or inconsistent with mine.
For folks that are just learning how to resolve conflict and want to, from your experience, is it true that resolving conflict or optimizing conflict is can get better with practice? It becomes a sort of muscle memory, like with practice, that it's easier for it to react and more naturally or subconsciously to those situations.
100%. And I think that that is the core of, and really the starting point of the conflict optimization workshop is that we are all in a journey of self improvement. Um, Heraclius once said, "No man ever steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river, and he's not the same man." And I think that applies to everything that we do. And we have the opportunity to be a better person and to go into new situations, understanding that situations are different in every instance of a particular kind of conflict, and we need to use our judgment and our constantly evolving skills to handle them.